Today we're comparing the Red Komodo against the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame. The Blackmagic and the Red Komodo have very similar image quality, although the Red is reported at 16 plus stops of dynamic range, has some different features like global shutters, a Super 35 sensor, while the Blackmagic has 13 stops of dynamic range, is a full frame sensor, has a lot more rolling shutter since it's not a global shutter, and has a different form factor. They both are 6K cameras, they both shoot RAW internally, and they're both cinema cameras, giving you the options like time code, shutter angle, internal RAW recording. They both have mirrorless mounts. When you look at the prices of both of these cameras and you factor in Blackmagic just released the PYXIS, which has the exact same sensor, frame rates, image quality as the Blackmagic full frame, the price of both Blackmagics become very close to the price of a used Red Komodo now that Red has lowered the price on the Komodo. So I wanted to take a look here while I'm in town for a shoot to see, with using the Sigma 24-35 with and without a speed booster on the Red Komodo and just with the Sigma MC21 adapter on the Blackmagic, is the image quality close on both cameras? And does it change at all when using a speed booster, bringing the Blackmagic pretty close in sensor size, even maybe a little bit wider than the Blackmagic in full frame? Everything is shot at 35mm and at f2 wide open, even with the speed booster on. The goal is again to see what are the differences, especially the 24-35 wide open at f2 is extremely sharp. Does the speed booster change anything on the Red Komodo when shooting at f2? Since its f-stop isn't super low like f1.2 or f1.4, you may be able to get away with shooting wide open without having much artifacting to your image. It's no surprise that the images from both of these cameras are really fantastic. Now, one of the things I noticed when going over the footage is, although I matched the Blackmagic full frame to the Red Komodo, the colors are slightly different, specifically when you look at blues and reds. The Blackmagic just does blues a little bit differently from the Red, and the Red definitely does blues and reds differently from a lot of other cameras out there. But they were pretty close and, in my opinion, good enough to use at certain angles, both cameras at the same time as an A and B camera, which was one of the reasons I wanted to do this experiment while I was in Atlanta, as I wanted to see if I used the Blackmagic with the 24-35 and I put something like the 50-100 on the Red Komodo, which currently there really isn't anything like that in full frame. Can I use both of these cameras together? And the answer is pretty much an overall yes, absolutely. Another thing that surprised me was when using the speed booster on the Red Komodo. As you can see from the footage here, it looks very similar field of view wise to the Blackmagic. It's even a little bit wider than the Blackmagic, which is one of the cool parts about using Sigma lenses that are full frame with speed boosters, because one of the things with Sigma lenses is it seems that they cover a little bit more than full frame, and that may be one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of vignetting, even when you use their Super 35 lenses on a camera like the Red Komodo, which, although it's Super 35, it is a 1.33 crop of full frame instead of the traditional 1.5, 1.6 crop, but we still don't really get any vignetting with the Sigma 18-35 on the Red Komodo. So it's great that I could put a speed booster on the Komodo, and the image is very, very similar. And then on top of that, when you take the speed booster off, it almost gives the lens a complete different use. I really love the look at 35 millimeters when not using the speed booster and it's a bit more telephoto, because it just has a little bit of a different look to the actual footage itself, and you're still maintaining 6K, which is pretty cool. Even though we used a slider for the second shot, rolling shutter really didn't come into effect in the Blackmagic at all, even though it has severe rolling shutter compared to the Komodo, which was great to see because I do want to start putting the Blackmagic on the gimbal, and I know that it's not going to operate quite as well as the Red Komodo does. But now that I have this cage from Small Rig, I can offset the camera a little bit. I can now use it on my RS2, which is pretty cool. But that leads me into some of the differences when it comes to the actual physical bodies of both cameras. So the Red Komodo is a much more modular camera. For this shoot, modularity didn't really matter as much. I actually preferred to use the Blackmagic because of the big screen built in. I didn't have to add a screen on top of the camera. But when it comes to gimbal work, the Komodo makes a lot more sense just because of how small it is, how easy it is to set up on a gimbal. You can hook up your phone to wirelessly monitor the gimbal and not have to have cords coming out. And although the PYXIS was just released, and it is a much more modular answer to the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame, you still don't have the wireless monitoring features. So you still have to use something like an SDI cord going from the camera to a monitor, because let's face it, you're going to need some kind of monitor on a gimbal in order to monitor the PYXIS. You could probably get away with not having an external monitor when using the Blackmagic full frame because it's got that old pocket style body and it's got that huge built-in screen on the back. But for me, I like having the ability to wirelessly monitor the Red via the Red Control app with my phone, because I can fully control the camera. I can control the focus points if I'm using an autofocus lens. There's just so much more I can do. And it's one of the things that after I did this test, I'm definitely not getting rid of the Komodo anytime soon. If I want to get the full frame look out of the Komodo, just pop on a speed booster if you're using EF lenses. If I want to use the global shutter features or I need more modularity, well, I've got the Komodo already. Now, a downside of the Komodo compared to the Blackmagic full frame and even the PYXIS is it does use older media. At this point, it uses CFast 2.0, where the newer Blackmagic cameras, they all use CF Express Type B cards, which are modern. They're even less expensive than CFast 2.0, which is pretty crazy since it's a newer kind of media card. Not to forget that you can hook up external hard drives to the Blackmagic cameras and not even have to use CF Express B cards, although I don't like doing that because I don't like stuff sticking out of the camera when I don't need it. There are a lot of users who use that function all the time. Small Rig even has the ability to add this little hot shoe piece to their cage so you can hook up your Samsung T7 and it fits a lot more snug than having to DIY a solution yourself. With the PYXIS just shipping and me having my hands on the PYXIS at NAB earlier this year, I wanted to do this test to see if the Blackmagic was so close to the Komodo, or maybe even better in some ways, that it would make sense for me to maybe get a PYXIS or to just get rid of the Komodo and maybe use my Blackmagic exclusively. And after doing these tests, it's just different strokes for different folks. The cameras, even though they're both cinema cameras, they have different specialties to them, like the Blackmagic being full frame, the built-in screen. When it comes to codecs, R3D is the better codec between R3D and BRAW, since it's usable in all NLEs, and BRAW is really just usable in DaVinci Resolve. Can be used in Final Cut in Adobe, but you need plugins, and it just doesn't work as well unless you actually use DaVinci Resolve. Now, I think the biggest challenge when it comes to lenses and using either the Red Komodo or the Blackmagic here in 2024 is if you're using mirrorless lenses. So the problem we've come up with the Komodo is Sigma just started to come out with official RF licensed lenses that aren't made by Canon, they're made by Sigma, but Sigma makes really fantastic glass that doesn't seem to work at all with the Red Komodo. No electronic communication, so that means no focusing whatsoever. Definitely no autofocus, but the focus just doesn't work on those lenses. Where you don't really have that problem with L-mount, any L-mount cameras that come out for the Blackmagic. They seem to be pretty good with that. Red's going to have to do some kind of firmware update, and they've made no official announcement, let's be clear. There's a lot of people talking about online that Red's coming out with some kind of update to make their cameras compatible with these new lenses, but they have not said anything publicly as of October 2024. So we'll see that when it happens. But that's one thing to remember. On top of that, if you're trying to speed boost lenses to get that full frame look, well, you can't do that with mirrorless lenses. You're going to have to use EF lenses. So if you're trying to get the full frame look and you're trying to do that on a budget, well, the Blackmagic's going to be the way to go because it is a full frame camera. The PYXIS is a full frame camera. There's tons of L-mount lenses out now, especially with Sigma's 28 to 45 that I absolutely adore. That may be a better option for you than getting a Super 35 camera that's not upgradable to full frame. And then if you want to get a full frame Red camera, it is a considerable amount more than either the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame or the PYXIS. So that's one of the reasons I picked up this Blackmagic. Besides the fact that they did that great sale a few months ago, it was nice to be able to have a full frame cinema camera at a really affordable price. And to a lot of filmmakers, content creators out there, I completely understand you may want to go full frame over Super 35, even though as you've seen in this video, the difference isn't that big. If that means a lot to you, then the Blackmagic cameras are still going to be the winner compared to something like the Red Komodo, especially if you don't care about rolling shutter. Let's talk about power for both of these cameras. Now, the Red Komodo uses BP955 batteries. When you use 2 of them, you get around 3 hours of battery life, and they keep the camera nice and compact. Of course, there's V-mount adapters, and you can get even longer run times, but when it comes to the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame, really, your options are you either get something like a battery grip, you get a DIY battery solution, or you get some kind of V-mount solution, which will add more bulk to the camera. It does add more bulk on the Komodo as well, but the Komodo gives you more options to make it as compact as possible, where on the Blackmagic, you're going to have to add rails, or maybe you're going to have to get some kind of really long power cord and rest your power source, whether V-mount or whatever it may be, on the ground. There's just a lot more to consider when rigging the Cinema Camera 6K full frame up, and it's one of the reasons that the PYXIS makes a lot of sense as well. If you need a more modular camera with better battery options, the PYXIS does use the newer Sony battery, which lasts a lot longer than these MPF batteries that are in these older pocket-style bodies. This weekend, shooting with the Blackmagic camera, it reminded me of that. I did have the actual battery grip. I actually got it right here with me. And I really like this battery grip, but the problem I have with it is that it doesn't work with any of the modern cages. So I'm using the small rig cage, and I can't use this battery grip when using the small rig cage. When I'm not using the small rig cage, this battery grip with the camera and the internal battery will last me most of a shoot. So it has me considering certain times not using a cage, using a cage. It depends on what I'm filming. When I'm here in a studio setup, because I'm filming with the Blackmagic right now, I'm using the cage. It just makes it easier to mount this thing. And on top of that, the cage will let me use this camera on something like a DJI RS2. And I have a power solution for the RS2. It actually plugs into the power port of the Blackmagic and then goes into one of the USBs on the RS2, and it will pull power from the Ronin. You don't get that much battery life on the Ronin, but it's a nice, easy way to keep the Blackmagic nice and compact without having to add a big battery source to it. But you lose a lot of power from the DJI RS2 battery, so it's not perfect for all shoots. If you can get away with maybe having an hour or so of battery life on that setup, it works. But if you need a whole day, it's not a solution, and it's part of the reason, unfortunately, I'm going to be keeping my Komodo. The other thing is the size of the PYXIS compared to the Komodo. It's a little misleading when you see it because it seems like it would be the same size as the Komodo. And I'm not going to say the PYXIS is a huge camera, but I got my hands on it at NAB. And when I saw it, it is clearly bigger than a Komodo, even with the batteries on the back. It just is what it is, but it's also a full frame camera. They're offering more I/O on the back of it, so I completely understand maybe why it needed to be bigger, even though there's no internal NDs or anything like that. And there's 2 CF Express Type B card slots, so they've done a lot and added a lot to that camera to make it better for professional use. But these are all things to consider when you're looking at the Blackmagic or the Red Komodo. They're both really great cameras with some unique sets, and that's again why I wanted to do today's video. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And if you got knowledge and value out of today's video, please make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell to keep up to date with the latest videos from the channel. And until next time, my name's Jeff Fagien. Thank you for joining me as always, and I will catch you in the next video.